So free, so free. You set us fire like the sky. Your spirit is one with me. Your wings span my ocean. Your eyes see everything. These sliders of your motions can make confidence ring. Get it all, your might and glory vanished from the sky. Leaving just another story. It's man-made life. They tell of how it fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour, the second installment this week of a conversation with Sew Webb, whistleblower extraordinaire, somebody I've known for a lot of years. It's been in this battle for a long time. Welcome, Stu. How are you?
I thank you, Clayton. It's always my honor, and I'm doing okay today.
Good. I don't know. We're having some really strange weather out. I'm telling you, I've got lawn chairs blowing around here in Austin, and it just it's like it just feels strange. I mean, it's no clouds in the sky, the wind's howling, and we've got strange weather all over the country. Are we, is Al Gore right, or are we, are Planet X coming by? What do you think's happening here?
Well, I think he's was correct on his analysis of Al Gore. That is correct of the global warming. Because of pollution, carbons, etc. I think he's very accurate on that. He did that intentionally. I mean, I know people that know Al Gore, and he did that intentionally to bring attention on this. When he was vice president, of course, after, he actually won the election. I give him credit for that. Bush stole through the Supreme Court. I mean, that's a whole history lesson in itself, but never be rewritten. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But, I think it's weather wars. I think it's because, Clayton, a friend of mine called me one time, way back, I think it was 2006 or something, and said, Stu, they just moved the jet stream. Now, this guy's high level up in the CIA, and I said, what? He said, yeah, they moved the jet stream. They did it with HAARP. And he said they moved it 500 miles south. And in April of that year, I think it was 2006 or 2007 or 8, whichever it was, they had you down there in Texas, all over Dallas and Oklahoma, and every place you had ice. And it was very unusual because I lived in Dallas back in the early 80s. And, you'd have the trees bloom out. And February the 1st, etc., it was nice weather. It started to get warm, but, that ice storm killed out a bunch of stuff. Well, they moved to 500 miles south. And I said, well, what are they able to do? Well, this is the first test and all that. And I get a call a couple days later. They moved it back up to the Canadian border. So they ran it back in about 800 miles north to see if they could do that. Well, now they've perfected it. Well, Jesse Ventura shares that same source. But Jesse Ventura touched on it less than a year later, and it was his last program on that TV station he had. Then he got back on, of course, here 2.5 years later, ran a few episodes, and he's not back on there. But he did one on weather wars, and it came out here about in one of his last episodes he did before he got kicked off again, and time slots changed and everything. But he did one on about how the Twin Towers were knocked down with the death ray, with an energy weapon, but it was the death ray. It was in that same segment. But if you go up on, I think he touched on it quite well about the weather wars, and I've watched this, and that same source that he shares, that he got most of his information from, I've known the guy for years, and been one of my many sources. He told me, he says, they're able to take this jet stream, he says, and they are able to make it a snake, move it around, and I watch the Weather Channel, and I'll sit there and watch that jet stream, and it'll go, instead of running east and west, which is his normal pattern, it's always running off of Alaska now, where the HAARP tower is. I forgot what HARP stood for, the high
altitude something or other. But yeah, I understand about HARP, and that is part of the weather wars. I mean, an atmospheric heater. Let's see, if we point this in the direction and we heat up a certain area, that it will change. It is capable of changing the jet stream.
Well,
you know, one of the things. Let me just hit on something, because this just kind of popped up in my mind. I've been looking for answers. You know, how do we deal with this? How do we fight evil without becoming evil? How do we prepare? I mean, they got all the money. They print all the money. And our founding fathers warned us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquer. And they are really, they're really hammering us right now. This weather wars, and they're poisoning us. They just don't. The whole Social Security thing doesn't work real well if you live to be 90. You know, so they gotta. And they wrote it in stone. They think the world's population needs to be reduced to a manageable 500 million. That'd be 499 million slaves and 1 million elite, wouldn't it?
So what do I think about that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Well, my opinion is that, you know, here's what it amounts to. We come back to what we discussed yesterday. It's the Council of 13. It's these 12 crime syndicate member families, the international bankers. One of them was my ex-in-law, Leonard Bellman. His sidekick, who became one of them, Larry Mizell, Daddy Bush, Meyer Rothschild, David Rockefeller, a guy named Thrace that runs Thrace and Company, tells the Queen of England what to do. Anwar bin Shari, the head rabbi of the Hedron in Israel, the head of all the synagogues worldwide, and this Pope Benedict that just left. And a guy named, I believe it's Warburg, is one of the other families. Now, the others out of that council, I don't know who they are. I don't know how many I just named off, but those are the ones I've come aware of, and it took me 28 years of 29 years now of research to understand what the bigger picture is. But they're in control of 90 to 95% of the economy. Actually, it's 97% now in the United States. The General Accounting Office said they're in control of 95%. 400 men are making more money than 150 million people at the lower end of the totem pole here in America, out of the 300 and roughly 15 million legitimate people that we have in the United States. And when I think we are up to about 350 or something of it, with the illegals that are in here, etc. Now, you know, you're talking 400 men make more money than you and I do, and another 140 some odd, 150 million people here. It's ridiculous. They only controlled 20% of the economy of the United States. It's flip-flopped in the past 30 years, and it's because of everything to do with theft, deception, drug trafficking, drug money, buying up the stock market, buying up these corporations, consolidation of these corporations, etc. All we have to do is put these 400 punks and the 12, put them in jail, confiscate everything that they got, because we can prove racketeering. I mean, I've tried to file, against them several times. I even did in Kansas City in U.S. District Court for injunctive relief, where they rolled me over on a concrete barrier trying to kill me. 2 additional car crashes, burned a customer's house down, all in the past 2.5 years. And I tried to put a stop to this, and I can't get any place. These judges are so controlled, known, because they're all appointed by Daddy Bush and Clinton and the rest of them. It comes down to the American people. When the American people figure out, Clayton, who the 12 families are, and the ones in the U.S., all of them are operating, that is, Meyer Rothschild, he can be found in New York. David Rockefeller can be found in New York. And I missed one, by the way. Henry Kissinger is one of them. He can be found over there on the East Coast. I forgot where he's at. You can Google most of them. Daddy Bush, Leonard Bellman's in Cuba. Larry Mizell is out in Denver, Colorado. If we just arrested these punks, brought them to justice, confiscate everything, force the United States government to do this, or the state governments, attorney generals, and confiscate everything they got. I know that Melman's worth $80 trillion. Daddy Bush is worth $80 trillion. Mizell's worth $30 trillion. And I've heard Kissinger and the rest of them were all up in that $80 trillion range. And you know, just yesterday, somebody stuck out on CNN. I don't watch the Cocaine News Network very often, but I try to tune in just to see their propaganda for the day for 5 or 10 minutes. And what are they putting up? The billionaires, saying, you know, they're worth $50 billion and stuff. Those are the Kabbalah billionaires they created underneath the trillionaires. They don't talk about the trillionaires, the crime syndicate family. Now, that's what it really comes down to. And these are buffers and cutouts for these people. Warren Buffett is, and all the rest of them that are billionaires today, they're fronts for these. They call them buffers in case they get caught. You know, they're the ones that finance them, should we say. It's just like Rupert Murdoch, you know, spying on everybody. Who financed Rupert Murdoch? Leonard Millman financed Rupert Murdoch. Financed all those satellites going up out of China, shooting them out of China. U.S. intelligence didn't even know what the hell was on them. Spy equipment, everything else, to spy on the American people and spy worldwide, part of their little Mossad operation. Because, I mean, it's just, what has happened to us here is out of control. And we've got to put it back in check and balances. And these same men control the Congress and they're controlling the Senate through APEC primarily, as we discussed yesterday. And it keeps coming back to the Jewish crime syndicates throughout the world. These are all these fake Khazarian Jews. Every one of them are. You know, people don't realize this, but George Bush's name, if you go back, his name was Sharif, I believe it was, back to his great-great-great-grandfather. Okay, it wasn't Bush. They changed their name. And these are the Khazarian Jews out of Russia, however it's pronounced. These are the ones that are the fake Jews, the ones that took over the Jewish identity. That the true Israeli people don't have any idea. These are the ones that created the ADL. These are the ones that created the Jewish Defense League. These are the ones that created AIPAC, the American-Israeli Pact, which is nothing but espionage inside the United States. These are the same people that are identified in the 16 intelligence agency report that I've had talks with about 20 different spooks that were involved in writing those reports, privy to those reports, have read those reports, that have discussed things with me about those reports, because they got them named in there. And that's what the problem is. They come to identify them for the first time, and they've been behind Oklahoma City bombing, as we discussed yesterday, 9/11 attack on America, stealing nuclear material off of Rocky Flats and selling it worldwide, including North Koreans that shot off a missile for the first time and was successful and had nuclear material on it, created a nice little earthquake where it landed down there. They're capable now of hitting us because they've learned to encase their, I don't want to say it too much, but they've learned to encase their electronics, should we say, to where that they can get it off the ground, where before the U.S. was just punch a button every time North Korea launched a one of their toys, and it would fizzle out and end up in the sea someplace. But now we get it off. And who is it behind it? It's these same people. They want to bring about a one world government. They've got to destroy the U.S., but they're using the U.S. They're using our military to do their bidding worldwide for oil to take over. It's the same men own all the oil throughout the world. Every dollar that comes, every bit of oil that comes in the United States comes in the United States, and who gets a piece of the action? Aramco, the American Radiant Oil Company, Aramco. Okay, who's on the board of directors of Aramco? Daddy Bush. He gets a check. Every time you go to the gas pump, he gets about 5 cents of every dollar that you pump into your gas tank. He gets in the way of profit, has for years. People don't know that since 1972. So, you know, it's time to shut him down. They've stolen, robbed, and looted America. Pension funds, 401k, all the losses during the savings and loan, and all the other people's money in their accounts, the junk ball and daisy chain. It's always been the same people, and nobody prosecutes them.
You know, that's the problem here. You couldn't get, you couldn't have a lawyer working. You couldn't have a title of nobility. Put some teeth in that, and of course we had a war and they destroyed that.
It's been a systematic destruction of our Constitution and our constitutional rights and checks and balances in government since about the turn of the century and before. And if you look at the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, then the Emergency War Powers Act in 1933, and then you take it forward and you take a look at all the wars that have been created, it's always the same stooges. And what is it? It's about power. It's about money. It's about takeover of other countries' resources. They've used the United States to do that. You look at the alien connection, which is the 1948 time frame, which are fallen angels. You look at their bases that they have around the planet. With immunity, they're allowed to go around and snatch up humans. You look at where all this money has gone. You come to today and the complete takeover when they created 1,500 trillion. That's with a T, not a B. $1 trillion worth of artificial derivatives tied to illegal $100 trillion worth of mortgages that they sat and created right in Denver, Colorado, and sold all the banks worldwide that got us in the financial condition that the worldwide we're all in. They had enough money to buy up the economies of the world 3 times over and could have already owned every bit of it. But why didn't that happen? What are they doing on Mars and what are they doing on the moon with these secret underground bases and these big cities they're building inside of that? And who's up there building it for them? They got to have the humans to do it. And why are they doing that? Are they planning on destroying the planet? Let's look at planet Earth for a minute and look how screwed up it is. They control the weather. They're able to move the jet stream instead of east to west. They're able to shoot it down over the Gulf and make it just drop straight south, shoot it east, shoot it back up like a snake, a big U, and shoot it back east and cause storms, weather wars, do anything they want. Okay, let's look at what happened in Japan. They do HARP again, caused an earthquake in Japan, and they got a meltdown of a nuclear plant. We got radiation all over the West Coast. We got the trash washed up last fall on the West Coast of the United States from it. They got radiation they found in all the tuna. And this is a scavenger. It eats other fish. High level. I wouldn't eat any fish right now, any place. And then you look at the Gulf of Mexico, what they did with that oil spill, and that's not over with, Clayton.
That was an attack on our food supply. The weather wars are an attack on our food supply. They're doing to us exactly what they did with more advanced technology in the Ukraine and in Russia.
You're very correct. And, a lot of people don't realize that oil spill that they did down there, they sucked out a 10-year supply of oil out of that hole when they allowed that thing to go. They brought 2 skimmers in. They built, after that Valdez spill up in Alaska years ago, they created these 2 skimmers, and they sprayed that place with arsenic, cyanide, and other heavy metals that made the oil all come together and bring the skimmers in. It separates the oil from the water. And I watched BP's profit that following quarter, what they reported, 300,000 some odd % increase in profits because of the amount of oil that they pumped out of that place. And it's still not over because there's the something gas. There's 2 gases. They're very deadly. Sitting out there is a big dead zone in the ocean that anything around it dies. It's creating new life in the ocean. We've had dead birds in places, flocks of them over Arkansas and stuff. And that is, some has said that those bubbles of that gas have come up there. We got a huge sinkhole now down there in Louisiana that's pumping out the same gas. And if you take a match and ignite that area, kaboom! That hole runs from the New Madrid fault down there in southeast Missouri, which has always been active fault line. 3-point plus all the time in earthquakes. 2-point, it registers. Every time California shakes, it shakes. And a lot of people have died that are eating the fish out of the Gulf. Deborah Dupree, a friend of mine, writes for the Examiner. She's put a new book out on it, about 6,000 deaths of people eating out of the ocean that are bleeding, have bled internally, and it's from these high doses of arsenic and cyanide and the other stuff they spray. At the same time BP had that happening, off of the coast of China, the same friggin' thing happened over there, and they're contaminating the Pacific Ocean right now. It's one of the deepest oil drills ever in history of the world. They said they can't cap it. It's still going. It's going to run for 20 years, they think, before it ever empties out. They got skimmers sitting over there sucking oil, and then at the same time in the Caspian Sea basin, which they wanted to get, and run that whole pipeline up through Afghanistan, and that was the reason for the attack on America and the whole bit, and to blame Afghanistan. And they were going to do that thing with Yukos oil, and that goes back to 81 in the Yugoslavia war, where Daddy Bush and Chevron got the oil leases out of the Caspian Sea basin. BP had the agreement on that one. What do? They're over there drilling the Caspian Sea basin. They're sitting there sucking oil out. At the same time, the Gulf of Mexico happens and China happens. They have the same problem, a blowout over there. The Caspian Sea's filling up. So they're filling up our oceans with oil. They're destroyed our fish life. You know, I mean, and we got our environmental problem from it, because here no longer than a month ago, we had a huge cloud of radiation. We put it in a posting up on my website, a huge cloud of radiation that came over the northern part of the United States from about Iowa north, from that situation in Japan. And we've still got that going on. So you're right. And then you look at chemtrails and all the viruses under Operation Cloverleaf that the U.S. Air Force is spraying us with, and have been since 1995, 6, 7, in that time frame. They've been doing it for years, but heavily. We need to put a stop to this. This is psycho nutty crap. It's this evil wants to destroy human life, and they are human. They may be possessed by fallen angels, or demons, or devils, or whatever, because they're evil. But we can stop them. Collectively, we're in the millions. There's just a few thousand of their asses, and I say it's time we duct tape them. It's time we handcuff them and drag them to the streets for trial.
Well, you know what? I just did a little 30-minute segment before you came up, and I said that God has called upon people in history to do things that change the outcome of history. He has already included that in his planned outcome. In the same way, this infinite, personal, living God of the universe is calling upon countless numbers of people to respond to his divine call. In all probability, this God who is there is calling upon you now to help participate in his plan and to choose with an act of your will to take certain actions. Among the infinite mathematical probabilities, he has already taken into account the outcome of such actions and included it in his prophetic plan. In other words, it is possible to step outside the matrix of reality, which now resembles a computer-generated illusion, and understand that if you have the faith of a little child, you can access the keys of the kingdom, along with the supernatural authority that goes with it. This authority was given to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It was also given to the disciples of Jesus Christ, who were instructed to pass it on to anyone who would believe. When the term power from on high is used in conveying the upper room experience of the disciples, it's not used in a religious sense. It literally means incredible force and power, and can be released into this world for numerous reasons. One can study biblical Bible prophecy along with the Luciferian plan, and that's exactly what you're talking about. I'm not sure if it's Lucifer. I think they might have demonized the angel of light, but I think we are talking about a satanic religion, a satanic power, and hey, Satan promised Jesus all the kingdoms on the world if he would go along with him, and Jesus didn't accept it, but somebody took it. So who did he give the power to?
He gave it to humans if they're willing to sell their souls, and you're very correct in this. And we are up against an evil force, and it's do we stand by as Christians? Do we stand by as God-fearing people and God-worshiping people? No, we don't stand by. I believe in the old biblical texts like David and Goliath. Look at the story of David and Goliath. God tells him to go out and pick up 3 stones. They had to be a certain stone that were right out of that river, the whole bit. He goes and picks up those stones. He only needed 1. Look how many God used David and his army for. He slew how many tens of thousands, it says. I'm not saying go out here and kill them. I'm saying for the God-fearing people.
By God, I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing with the show, with you on this show, putting up with these ignorant friggin' trolls on the internet. if God didn't want me to do this, because there's one person out there that's listening to me that may chip in, that may make a donation, that may have a talent and a skill that I don't have. I mean, you know, Stu, we all rise to our own level of incompetence, and that mine might be the internet. I don't know.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and I'm in agreement. And it comes down to, you know, religion is there to control the masses. That's what the Catholic Church was formed for back in when it was the 1500s or whatever. It was to control the masses. Oh, come worship the Popagoon, I call him, the Pokemon. He's all high and mighty and the holy. No, the way you get to God is not go to church and ask your pastor, preacher, Pokemon, I call him pulpit goons. Pray for me. I'm not getting my prayers answered. The only way you get your prayers answered, get on your hands and knees and talk to God, Jesus Christ Almighty himself. Whether you believe in Christ or believe in God is your own thing. And I look at it that way. I wish everybody knew him like I do and like you do, because I'll tell you, I wouldn't be breathing today after 30 attempts if it wasn't for Christ. I admit that.
How can, let me ask you this. I mean, if you don't believe in miracles, folks, how could I get T-boned on my Road King, hit hard enough to roll me over 3 times, to bend both of my roll bars almost flat, and be able to walk away without a broken leg, with 3 broken ribs and a broken collarbone?
Well, it's the same way here. 3 times on a concrete barrier where they intentionally tried to assassinate me, using FBI stooges, running into me or sliding, scrape a wall. They jackknifed off the wall, hit me in the left rear, just took my van right in the middle of the freeway, 3 lanes, and flipped me. And all I saw was that concrete barrier coming at me as I'm scraping the hell